Rain hammered the windshield the night everything changed forever. I flagged a cab on Pike Street, soaked to the bone. A woman's voice from the front seat said, "Get in." Her eyes found mine in the rearview mirror and held. I told the driver an address I never actually meant. 3 months later, that address became my whole heart. But someone was about to destroy everything we built. My name is Maya Whitfield, 29 years old, a graphic designer living in Seattle, Washington. Far from my strict Baptist family in rural Ohio, I had spent my whole life hiding who I really was, until one rainy October night handed me a stranger I couldn't stop thinking about. The cab driver introduced herself as Jordan Reyes, filling in for her cousin's night shift because rent was due at the end of the month. I gave her my real address instead of my ex-boyfriend's old apartment, the lie I usually told when strangers asked where I lived. She caught the hesitation in my voice and smiled knowingly, like she'd heard 100 women give directions to nowhere before. "You don't have to go home yet," Jordan said, nodding toward an all-night diner glowing yellow through the rain-streaked window. I should have said no. Instead, I found myself sliding into a vinyl booth across from a woman I'd known for 11 minutes. We talked until the coffee went cold twice. About art school dropouts, difficult mothers, and cities that never quite felt like home. Jordan drew constellations on a napkin while she talked, absent-minded, like her hands needed something to do besides hold a coffee cup. When she finally drove me home near dawn, she didn't ask for my number. She just said, "I hope you find your real address someday." I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying her laugh, low and easy, like she'd never once apologized for taking up space. 3 days later, I saw her cab parked outside my building, engine running, like she'd been debating whether to knock for an hour. "I forgot to give you this," she said, holding out a folded napkin covered in tiny painted stars from that diner booth. I invited her upstairs for coffee that never got poured, and we talked until the streetlights outside flickered off at sunrise. By the end of that week, I had memorized her cab's license plate number just so I'd know when she was near. Jordan picked me up most nights after work. No fare on the meter, just an excuse to drive the long way past the water. I learned she painted murals on weekends, covering gray Seattle walls with color for cheap, sometimes for nothing but the thank you. She learned I hadn't told my mother the truth about myself since I was 17 years old and terrified of losing my family. Neither of us called it dating, though we both showed up every time, dressed a little too carefully for two friends grabbing tacos. One night she took me to the top of a parking garage to watch the ferries cross the black water below the skyline. "I like you, Maya," she said plainly. No games. Just her breath fogging in the cold air between us like a confession. I panicked and changed the subject, and she let me. Patient in a way no one had ever been with my fear before. Took me 2 more weeks to admit I liked her too. Whispered fest. Like ripping off a bandage before I lost my nerve. Jordan didn't make a big moment of it. She just reached over and laced her fingers through mine like she'd been waiting. Our first kiss happened in her cab, parked under a broken streetlight, rain drumming softly on the roof like applause. I cried afterward. Not from sadness, but from the terrifying relief of finally letting someone see the whole of me. She wiped my face with her thumb and said, "Nobody gets to make you feel small for this. Not even you." We started spending every free evening together, trading her murals for my sketchbooks, building a small world only we understood. My best friend Priya noticed the change in me first. The way I hummed while cooking. The way I stopped checking my phone constantly. I told Priya everything over wine one Friday night, and she just hugged me and said, "Finally. I was wondering when you'd catch up." Jordan met Priya soon after, and the two of them ganged up on me about my terrible taste in reality television within an hour. For the first time in years, I stopped dreading Sunday phone calls with my mother, because I finally had something worth protecting quietly. Jordan showed me her favorite mural, hidden behind a laundromat, a woman made entirely of blue and gold feathers reaching toward the sky. "That's how you looked the night I picked you up," she admitted, embarrassed. like she'd said too much too soon. I started leaving small things at her apartment. A toothbrush. Sweater. Proof that I was choosing to stay instead of just visiting. She taught me to parallel park in her old cab, laughing every time I clipped the curb on 4th Avenue downtown. I taught her to cook my grandmother's cornbread, though she burned the first batch trying to multitask and kiss me at the same time. We spent a whole Saturday exploring Pike Place Market, buying flowers we didn't need just to have an excuse to hold something together. Jordan introduced me to her mother over video call, a warm woman named Carmen who immediately asked when I was visiting Texas. I hesitated, unsure how to explain that my own mother didn't know Jordan existed, let alone what she meant to me. Jordan noticed my silence and simply changed the subject, never pushing, letting me carry that weight at my own pace. 6 months in, she gave me a key to her apartment, tucked inside a card that read, "For the address you actually want." I kept that key on a chain around my neck, hidden under my shirt, a small secret pressed against my heart daily. We celebrated her gallery debut together. 3 small murals reproduced on canvas, hung in a coffee shop near Capitol Hill. Watching strangers admire her work, I felt proud in a way that scared me, because pride meant I had something real to lose. That night she asked, half joking, if I'd ever bring her home to Ohio to meet the family that raised me. I laughed too quickly and said maybe someday, and she let the lie sit between us without correcting it. Though her eyes dimmed slightly, Priya warned me gently that avoiding the truth wouldn't protect Jordan forever, that eventually someone would ask the wrong question at the wrong time. I told myself I had time, that Seattle was far enough from Ohio that my 2 lives could stay separate indefinitely. Jordan started leaving her jacket at my place too. A quiet agreement that neither of us said out loud but both understood completely. We spent Christmas together instead of flying home, stringing lights across her tiny balcony and calling it our first holiday. My mother called Christmas morning, and I stepped outside to take it, leaving Jordan alone with the ornaments we'd bought together. "You sound happy lately," my mother said suspiciously, and I told her it was just a good year at work. Nothing more. Jordan overheard part of that call through the window and said nothing, but her smile afterward looked a little more careful. I promised myself I would tell my parents soon. Once I found the right words. Once I found the courage I kept postponing. We adopted a scrappy gray cat from a shelter that spring, naming him Detour. A joke about how we'd both ended up here. Jordan quit driving nights so we could have dinner together, taking a day job restoring murals for the city instead. Watching her climb scaffolding in the sun, paint on her jeans, I understood that I had fallen for her completely and without reservation. One evening she asked me to move in properly. No more toothbrush arrangements. An actual shared address on both our names. I said yes before she finished the sentence, and we celebrated by ordering too much Thai food and dancing badly in the kitchen. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like my real self and my public self were finally the same person. Priya helped us move boxes that weekend, teasing that we were the most domestic lesbians in Seattle within 1 calendar year. Jordan hung her feathered mural print above our shared bed, the same one that reminded her of me the night we met. I finally sent my mother a photograph, cropped carefully, just my face and Jordan's shoulder, testing the waters without fully committing. My mother texted back one word, "Nice," and I told myself that was progress, even though something in my chest tightened anyway. Jordan and I planned a small anniversary trip to Portland, our first vacation together, a symbol of how far we had come. I booked the hotel under both our names, a tiny act of defiance that felt bigger than it should have. 2 weeks before Portland, my father called to say my grandmother was dying and the whole family wanted me home for what might be goodbye. I flew back to Ohio alone, promising Jordan I would explain everything to my parents while I was there. Finally. Completely. My grandmother's farmhouse smelled the same as my childhood, and grief made the house feel smaller, fuller of expectations I tried to outrun. At the hospital, my mother introduced me to Caleb, a deacon's son. saying casually that he'd always asked about me over the years. I realized my parents had quietly arranged a courtship without telling me, believing distance and time would eventually bring me back in line. I tried to correct her gently, but grief filled the room, and I swallowed my truth again to avoid one more funeral argument. That night I called Jordan crying, and she listened without judgment, though I could hear the hurt underneath her steady voice. "I'm not asking you to choose today," she said quietly, "but I need to know I'm not a secret forever. Maya." I promised her I would tell my parents before I left Ohio, though the promise felt heavier with every passing hour. My grandmother passed 3 days later, surrounded by family, and in the chaos of funeral planning, my courage kept slipping further away. At the wake, my mother mentioned Caleb again, hopeful. And something in me finally cracked under the weight of everyone's expectations. "I'm seeing someone in Seattle," I blurted, and the room went quiet in a way that felt like the floor dropping out. "A man." "I assume," my father said carefully, and I realized I had one sentence left before there was no turning back. "Her name is Jordan," I said, voice shaking, and watched my mother's face shift from confusion into something colder and more distant. My father left the room without a word, and my mother said only, "Not today, Maya. Not at your grandmother's funeral." I flew back to Seattle the next morning, exhausted, unsure if I had just broken my family or finally freed myself from pretending. Jordan met me at the airport, and I collapsed into her arms, unable to explain what had happened until we were home. She held me while I cried, then said softly, "Thank you for trying. That's all I ever asked you to do." For weeks, my parents didn't call, and the silence felt louder than any argument we could have had over the phone. Jordan tried to give me space to grieve both my grandmother and my family's rejection, though I could see her own hurt underneath. Priya reminded me that silence wasn't the same as a final answer, that some parents needed time before they could find their words. At work, a coworker saw Jordan drop me off one morning and asked, too casually, if we were just roommates or something more. I panicked and said roommates, and Jordan, waiting in the car, saw the whole conversation happen through the office window. That night she asked why I still flinched at strangers, when I claimed I was ready to live honestly with everyone who mattered. I admitted I was scared of losing my job too. In a company where the CEO was known for old-fashioned, conservative views. Jordan didn't argue, but I noticed she stopped mentioning me by name when her coworkers asked about her personal life either. We were both hiding in different rooms of the same house, and neither of us knew how to say so out loud. My mother finally called in March, her voice tight, asking if this was a phase I'd grow out of eventually with time. I told her, as gently as I could, that Jordan wasn't a phase, that she was the realest thing in my life. My mother hung up before I finished the sentence, and I sat on the kitchen floor until Jordan came home and found me there. Maybe I should meet them, Jordan offered later. Show them I'm not some stranger who stole their daughter away from them. The idea terrified me, but I agreed, hoping a real face might soften what a phone call clearly couldn't reach. Before we could plan the trip, Jordan's ex-girlfriend, Renee, resurfaced, needing a place to stay after a sudden breakup with someone else. I tried to be understanding, but jealousy crept in every time Renee texted Jordan about old memories only the two of them shared. Jordan promised there was nothing left between them, but the constant texts made our apartment feel crowded even when Renee wasn't there. One night I saw a woman leaving Jordan's restoration job site, laughing with her hand on her arm, and my stomach dropped instantly. I confronted Jordan that evening, voice sharper than I intended, asking who that woman was and why she never mentioned her before. Jordan looked stunned, then hurt, saying only, "That's my sister, Maya. Alicia. She's been in town for a mural project all week." I felt embarrassed for assuming the worst, realizing my own fear of losing her had made me suspicious of someone who was family. Jordan forgave me quickly, but the moment revealed how fragile we'd both become under the pressure of hiding and pretending simultaneously. Meanwhile, my father sent one short email, asking only if I would come home for Easter. No mention of Jordan at all. I read it as an opening, however small, and decided to go home, hoping proximity might do what phone calls couldn't. Jordan encouraged me to go alone this time, saying she didn't want to be used as a test my parents hadn't agreed to yet. At Easter dinner, Caleb showed up uninvited, clearly still hopeful, and my mother's smile made it obvious she'd arranged it deliberately again. I excused myself outside, furious, and found my father sitting alone on the porch, staring at nothing in particular. "Your grandmother knew," he said quietly, surprising me completely. "She told me years ago. Said you looked at girls the way I looked at your mother." I sat down beside him, stunned, and asked why she never said anything to me directly while she was alive. "She was waiting for you to trust yourself first," he said. "She said forcing it would only make you hide longer." That night, my father asked to see a photo of Jordan, studying it a long time before saying simply, "She looks kind." It wasn't full acceptance, but it was the first crack of light I'd seen from him in almost a year of silence. My mother, however, remained distant, saying she needed more time. That faith and family didn't change as fast as I wanted them to. I left Ohio with one parent softening and one still closed, unsure which version of my family I would ultimately keep. Back in Seattle, I told Jordan everything, and she cried hearing about my grandmother's quiet, unspoken acceptance all those years. "I wish I'd met her," Jordan said softly, and I realized how much my family's approval mattered to both of us, not just me. My father started texting occasionally, small questions about my life, careful but genuine, like he was practicing being a different kind of father. My mother's silence stretched into summer, broken only by short, dutiful messages about weather and church events, nothing about Jordan at all. Meanwhile, tension grew at my workplace after a rumor spread that I was dating a woman, likely from the coworker who saw us. My manager called me in, not to fire me, but to clarify company values, a conversation that left me shaken and humiliated. I told Jordan I was considering quitting before they could push me out quietly, tired of hiding pieces of my life at work too. She offered to help cover rent while I searched for something better, insisting my safety mattered more than any paycheck ever could. Renee resurfaced again, this time asking Jordan for a loan, claiming an emergency. An old resentment I thought we'd resolved reignited between us. I overheard Jordan agree to lend her money without discussing it with me first, and something protective and hurt flared up inside me. We argued for the first time seriously. Not about Renee exactly, but about decisions made alone in a life we'd promised to share. "I'm not used to checking in with anyone," Jordan admitted, frustrated. "I've taken care of myself since I was 17. It's hard to unlearn." I softened, realizing her independence wasn't rejection of me, but a habit built long before I ever existed in her life. We made up that night, but the fight revealed cracks neither of us had examined closely enough during the easier early months. 2 weeks later, I quit my job, taking a freelance design contract that paid less but let me finally exist without pretending. Jordan celebrated with me, though I noticed her checking our shared bank account more carefully, quiet worry replacing her usual easy confidence. Money grew tight that summer, and stress crept into small arguments about dishes, deadlines, and whose turn it was to worry more. My mother finally called again in July, asking bluntly if this situation was permanent, if I intended to bring shame to the family forever. I told her, voice steadier than I expected, that loving Jordan wasn't shameful, and I wouldn't apologize for it any longer. She said she needed time to pray on it, and I told her I understood, though the distance between us still ached constantly. Jordan's restoration contract ended unexpectedly when city funding was cut, leaving her without steady work for the first time in years. I picked up extra freelance clients to cover the gap, and we settled into a tense rhythm of counting every dollar carefully together. One night, exhausted, Jordan snapped that maybe things were easier before I forced my family drama into our already stressful life together. The word stung more than she intended, and I left the apartment upset, staying at Priya's for 2 uncomfortable, silent nights. Priya reminded me that stress makes people say cruel things they don't fully mean, and relationships survive by choosing repair over pride. Jordan showed up at Priya's door the next evening, apologizing, saying fear about money had made her lash out unfairly at me. I forgave her. Understanding my own fear about family had made me distant too. Each of us fighting invisible battles alone. We agreed to be more honest about stress, instead of letting it build silently until it exploded into words we couldn't take back. Just as things steadied, my father called with unexpected news. My mother had left church leadership after refusing to condemn me publicly. Apparently, the pastor had asked her to speak against the sin in her household, and she had quietly, firmly declined and walked out. I was stunned, unsure how to reconcile her silence toward me with this sudden, private act of protection I hadn't expected at all. My father explained she wasn't ready to say it to my face, but she wasn't willing to let strangers condemn her daughter either. It wasn't the reconciliation I wanted, but it cracked something open in me. Hope I'd almost convinced myself to stop feeling entirely. Meanwhile, Jordan's sister Alicia called with devastating news. Their mother, Carmen, had suffered a serious stroke back home in Texas. Jordan left within hours, and I stayed behind to handle our apartment, terrified for her and unsure how to help from so far away. I flew out 3 days later without telling her, using savings meant for rent, needing to be there the way she'd been there for me. Jordan broke down seeing me at the hospital, saying she hadn't wanted to ask, afraid of pulling me deeper into another family crisis. You don't have to ask, I told her. This is what showing up looks like. I'm not going anywhere. Jordan. Carmen survived but needed months of recovery, and Jordan quietly decided she might need to move home to Texas to help care for her. The idea of Jordan leaving Seattle terrified me. Unraveling the fragile life we had only just begun rebuilding after every previous obstacle. I offered to move to Texas with her, though the thought of my conservative home state again made my chest tighten instantly. Jordan refused at first, not wanting me to sacrifice the freedom I'd fought so hard to build in Seattle for her family's sake. We argued gently about it for days, both trying to protect the other from a decision that felt impossible either way we chose. Alicia offered to take a larger caregiving role instead, freeing Jordan from having to choose between her mother and her life with me. Relieved, Jordan stayed in Seattle, though guilt over not being there full-time for Carmen lingered heavily in her for weeks afterward. I tried to comfort her the way she'd comforted me through my own family's rejection, learning that support sometimes just means sitting quietly together. During this time, my mother finally texted a single question. Is she good to you? The first thing she'd asked about Jordan directly. I answered honestly, describing every small kindness, and my mother responded only, okay, but it felt like the beginning of an actual door. Jordan's mother, once she recovered enough to video call, asked to finally meet me properly, curious about the woman her daughter loved. I nervously introduced myself in broken, careful sentences, and Carmen laughed warmly, saying Jordan had described me exactly the way I sounded. For the first time, both families were inching toward acknowledgement, slow and imperfect, but undeniably real progress after nearly 2 years of silence. Then, in October, almost exactly 1 year since our first rainy taxi ride, Jordan told me she had a surprise plan for us. She refused to tell me details, only that we needed to drive back to the same diner where we'd talked until dawn together. I felt nervous excitement building all week, though a small part of me feared surprises after everything our relationship had already survived. The night arrived rainy again, almost identical to the one that started everything, And I laughed at how perfectly it repeated itself. We sat in the same booth. And Jordan pulled out the original napkin from that first night. Painted stars faded but still visible. I kept this the whole time, she said. Because some part of me knew you weren't just another fare that night. Then she told me the truth I never expected. Priya had actually arranged that first cab ride, texting Jordan's cousin to switch shifts deliberately. I stared at her, stunned, realizing my best friend had engineered our chance meeting after noticing Jordan's mural near my apartment months earlier. Priya had seen me staring at that feathered mural for 20 minutes one afternoon and decided fate needed a small, deliberate push forward. She thought you two would be perfect together, Jordan admitted. And honestly, I don't think either of us would argue with her now. I laughed through sudden tears, realizing the moment I thought was pure chance had actually been an act of quiet love from Priya. Jordan then reached into her jacket and pulled out a small velvet box, hands shaking slightly in a way I'd never seen before. My heart stopped as she knelt right there in the diner booth, other customers slowly turning to watch the moment unfold. I don't need your family's permission to know this is real, she said. But I need you to know I'm choosing you. Always. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed loudly on the table, my mother's name flashing across the screen at the worst possible moment. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer, so I did. Voice shaking. Right there in front of Jordan mid-proposal. My mother's voice was different, softer, saying she and my father wanted to fly out, that she was tired of missing my life. Through tears, I told her Jordan was on one knee in front of me right now, and the line went completely silent for a moment. Say yes, my mother finally said. Voice breaking. Don't you dare make that woman wait because of me. I've made you wait long enough. I turned back to Jordan, phone still in hand, and said yes before she even had to ask the actual question aloud. The diner erupted in quiet applause from strangers who had been secretly watching, and Jordan laughed and cried at the exact same time. My mother stayed on the line the whole time, crying too, saying she wanted to help plan whatever wedding we eventually chose to have. It wasn't a perfect ending. Not yet. But it was the first time my mother had chosen love over fear out loud. My father called back an hour later, saying simply, "Tell Jordan welcome to the family." His voice thick with emotion he rarely showed. Priya arrived at the diner within 20 minutes, having been waiting nearby the entire evening, in on the surprise from the very beginning. I told you fate needed a push, she said, hugging us both. But I didn't expect you two to actually make it this far. Carmen sent a video message from Texas, still recovering but smiling widely, saying she couldn't wait to properly meet her future daughter-in-law. Even Alicia texted congratulations, along with a photo of the original mural, now slightly faded but still standing behind the laundromat. Word spread quickly through both families, and slowly, cautiously, invitations and phone calls began replacing years of careful, painful silence between us. We decided to have a small wedding in Seattle, close to the water where Jordan first told me she liked me plainly. My mother offered, hesitantly, to help with the cornbread recipe, admitting she was curious what Jordan had done differently to make it work. My father asked if he could walk me down whatever aisle we chose. Voice unsteady, clearly still learning how to show up fully. Jordan's co-workers at the mural restoration company threw us a small engagement party, painting a mural together as their unconventional wedding gift. We chose to add a small feather motif to it, a quiet nod to the very first mural that had connected us months earlier. Priya gave a toast at the party, joking that she deserved a matchmaking fee, though really she just wanted us both happy forever. I sent my grandmother's old recipe card to my mother, the same cornbread recipe Jordan once burned trying to kiss me simultaneously. Standing in that kitchen with my mother weeks later, teaching her Jordan's favorite dish, felt like healing I never thought possible for us. The wedding day arrived clear and sunny, a rare gift in Seattle, as if the city itself wanted to celebrate along with us. My father walked me down the aisle, And my mother sat in the front row crying happy tears beside Jordan's recovering mother, Carmen. When Jordan and I kissed as newlyweds, I finally understood that the girl who once lied about her address had found her true one. Looking back, I realized love didn't erase every obstacle instantly. It simply gave me the courage to stop hiding from who I truly was. That rainy taxi ride didn't just take me home that night. It led me, slowly and honestly, to the family I finally chose completely. Fendi.